Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the practice of being human, and welcome to today's episode. We're going to talk about parenting and parenting more consciously. Craig and I, this past weekend, were in Las Vegas with some of our favorite humans. Sarah and Lincoln's for, I can't say that Vegas is where I really get excited about going, but because of them, I go and I've been there, I think now 3 times, and every time it's with them, I'm reminded of why I love Vegas because we don't do the casinos. We're doing just like exquisite dinners. We went on a hike this weekend in the desert, which was just glorious, and it had fall colors, which I was like, oh my God, it was beautiful. And we had just precious quality time. We got some good sleep and had some incredible conversations and came across some good humans. It just filled my cup. I feel like it's overflowing. Here I am reminiscing about the weekend and also just recognizing that when I'm with Sarah and Lincoln, they really are, they have been our village since we met up in Guatemala almost now 11 years ago, a little over 11 years ago. Back then, our families were intertwined in the best ways because we lived very close together. We raised our kids together. They went to school together at the Antigua International School. And we spent pretty much every day just moving through our world. We traveled together. I went on harrowing adventures in the raw and gorgeous land of Guatemala. We carried one another through everyday life. I am in forever gratitude to them and to have experienced something so special with such gorgeous humans. One of the things that I thought was so interesting, and my coach pointed this out to me because I was really wondering what it was that was so deeply resonant. And what I noticed was that my nervous system, it was as though it remembered this sense of village and home and grounding. Just when I'm with Lincoln and Sarah, it always feels like sacred ground. It feels safe. And I felt this belonging in my bones, that sense of being known, of being seen without performing, being real, being messy, and also this desire to keep evolving and growing. It's just the best of the best in that way. And so I am in humble gratitude for that kind of relationship. And I think this comes back to this conscious parenting because we talked a lot about living more awake and being conscious. And they appreciate, I think, the work that I do, and I so love what they do. Craig and I are always just in awe of the two of them. They are real creators in their fields. One of the conversations this weekend that served this episode up was that we were talking about parenting and how much we've learned, how much grace we wish we could go back and offer our younger selves. But also, I think their parenting and our parenting styles have been different, yet all of us feel a sense of gratitude and recognizing that we have still so much to learn. More than anything, I think the learning is that the real walk is inside of ourselves. And the more we get to know ourselves, how differently we show up in relationship. That includes parenting more than anything. I was sharing with them Gabor Maté's work and teachings and how much that has reshaped how I see parenting and how I teach parenting and share that with my clients. Sarah, as we were talking about Gabor Maté, I was sharing with them some of the reels. This morning, when I opened my Instagram, I found a message and a reel from Sarah with Gabor's words. And she now says she's literally obsessed with him. He was saying, I never doubt that parents love their children, or at least there is an impulse in them to do so. But the love a parent feels is not necessarily the love the child receives. What the child receives is the quality of the parent's presence. And these really hit home for me because I know that I have always loved my children deeply, yet what they received wasn't always that love in its purest form. It was mired in a lot of things, and sometimes it was my stress. my busyness, or a lot of times that was the case, my fear, my preoccupation with doing things right, my perfectionism, how I was showing up in those days and at that time. And what Gabor invites us to see is that our children don't feel our love through our intentions. They feel it through our nervous systems, through the way we show up. And this is the work I feel like of my life going forward, is creating and cultivating more and more presence. And I share this with all of you because if you're listening to this and you are a parent or a young adult or a child, and you are a child of someone, you can understand this and relate to it. There's this other incredible wisdom that I shared with Sarah and Lincoln this weekend, and I think they appreciated. And I have shared this also with clients. And this is where his wisdom about siblings comes in, because it helps explain so much of what we see and feel as parents with our kiddos. And whether we have one, two, three, four, 10 kids, people often ask how siblings can grow up in the same house with the same parents and the same family, and yet seem to have a very different childhood. I can think about this in my family of five, and I'm the youngest. Sometimes I feel as though each one of us grew up in a different family or in the same family, but had such different, unique experiences to one another. And Gabor walks us through this and explains it, and I think it is so on point. And what he says is that number one of the biggest differences is birth order. Parents don't relate to their first child the same way they relate to their second or third or fifth child. We are evolving as parents, and that shows up in our parenting. The second thing is gender and temperament. Each child evokes something unique in us, not by choice necessarily, but by chemistry and energy and resonance. This too struck me as real and on point. And I have four marvelous, messy, under construction, beautiful young adults in my world. Each one of them evokes something unique in me, not by choice, but by chemistry and energy and resonance. And I think that's just kind of incredible to be able to put words to and to understand. I don't love one child more than the other, but I have a different relationship, different resonance, different chemistry, different energy with each child. And I think that's really cool to understand. The other is life stages. And as he said, as parents and as we move through these life stages, our relationships, our work, our finances, even personal growth, all shift between children. And we aren't the same people we were 5 years earlier, or 10 years earlier, or 5 months earlier, right? And then the final one he mentions that I think really impacts our relationship with our each one of our children is perception. Because even if we could be the same parent to each child, which we can't, as he would say, they would still experience us differently because they see and feel the world differently. I think all of us can relate to this, both as a child and as a parent. Gabor says it's not that we love one child more than another, but each child evokes a different version of us. So they each end up having a different parent. So, like I said, I shared this with Sarah and Lincoln. I think it resonated with them. For Craig and me, it resonates. For the many parents I've shared this with, they get it and they feel it and they are able to understand something that maybe they knew and were feeling and experiencing, but didn't have words for. That's what is so beautiful about this kind of work is I love hearing someone put words to something that I might not have been able to articulate before. And once that happens, it's like, yes. And that is what Gabor's work feels like for me. So even within my own family, I grew up in the same home, had the same parents, and the same kind of love from them. Even within my own family, for Craig and me and our four kids, Ellie, Ben, Leo, and Mora, we're in the same home, same parents, same kind of love. Each of our four children has lived a very different experience of us. And that's not failure, it's humanity. And I think that's something to hold in the light and not judge. Our team A, which is Ellie and Ben, our two oldest, and then two youngest, Maura and Leo, we call them our team A, team B. And I think the team A would say we parented very differently than we did with team B. And that is in light of all the things Gabor talks about, right? And the birth order, gender and temperament, life stages, the perception. That is, it's a real thing and it is humanity. And I think we all want to hold space for that. When I think back on my early years of parenting, I see it with new eyes. And I see how often I was loving, but not necessarily attuned. And then I see how my desire to do it right and to do it well sometimes disconnected me from what was actually happening right in front of me. That young adult human right in front of me, I might not have been fully attuning to them. And likely I wasn't. I was there, but I was also 10 other places. I was mothering more from my conditioning, from the stories I'd inherited, from what I thought love should look like. And honestly, I was doing my very best. And I can say that with such tenderness because I truly was. And now that I know different, I do differently. I parent differently. But the thing that Gabor says, and I think is so powerful, is that my children didn't experience my intention. They experienced my presence. And that realization, as I said, initially, it kind of broke my heart. And I will admit, it kind of still does at times. But then I come back to opening my heart to what is, because it invites compassion, not shame. We cannot give what we do not have. And until we know differently, we do the very best with what we have available to us. If I wasn't calm, it's likely I wasn't taught how to be calm. I had a very anxious mom, and I think that plays a part. She was a love, and she was very anxious. If I wasn't attuned, it's probably because no one really modeled attunement for me. There was a lot going on in our family. It was a very colorful, full-plated family and had a special needs oldest brother. And then there were, four of us following Mark's footsteps, and we all were, we all had our needs, our schedules, our lives. And then there were my parents and their marriage and their relationship and their dynamic. If I was overworked or reactive, likely it was because I was surviving the only way I knew how at that time. And so that is where the healing lives. It's not in self-blame. It really is so much more in self-compassion. It's taking ownership, being responsible, having humility, and tenderizing the entire experience in a way that I can hold it with love and honor and reverence. I can also hold it and say, I now know differently, and I will do differently going forward. I did the best I could, and I hope and pray that my kiddos will always know that. When we hold our own story with gentleness, with reverence, we stop passing our pain forward, and we begin to parent not just our own children, but the child inside of us who is still waiting to feel safe, loved, and enough. And parenting in this way becomes a sacred mirror. Our children call forth the parts of us that most need healing, and they become our greatest teachers. Not because they demand perfection, but because they invite presence. And that, I believe, is truly a most sacred gift. So here are a few small practices that I return to, especially when I feel the pull toward old patterns. You can choose to add these to your toolkit. The first one is regulating before you relate. When your child is upset, pause. Check your body first. Breathe. Ground. Take some deep breaths and then connect. Maybe go get that glass of water. It's kind of my favorite thing to do. Because here's the thing, you can't regulate and you cannot co-regulate from dysregulation, okay? Super, super important. So regulate, and then you can co-regulate. Number two is repair over perfection. As Gabor says, rupture is inevitable, but repair is everything. A simple, I'm sorry, that was my frustration talking, or my anger talking, or my fear talking. This acknowledgement, this honesty can restore connection faster than pretending it didn't happen. Repair, repair, repair. 3 is stay curious. So instead of what's wrong with you, try what's happening for you. Instead of why the behavior, why the pain? What's underneath the behavior? What's going on that is driving your actions, your behavior, your words? Curiosity is really how we build trust, and also how we don't come at things with judgment, but we see beneath the surface. We see below and almost beneath the words and the actions to what really is the driving force. And that is always where connection, healing, that's always where the gold really is. And then 4th is tend to your own inner world. And that means rest and stillness and therapy, coaching, friendship, breath, all of it. Weekends in Vegas with your people, your sacred ground, whoever they may be. These are not luxuries, although they feel like luxuries. They're how you refill your well so that your presence becomes steady enough to hold your own and also your children. So if you're listening to this and your heart aches for that younger version of you who didn't know all of this, hold her or him very close. She or he was doing what she knew and was learning love through imperfection. She was doing the best she could. And that is something. Maybe your children, like mine, will someday see that too. We don't know this. We can't control that. But even if the love we gave wasn't always felt in its fullest and its fullness, it was always there, doing its best to find its way through. And today, we can do better. We can love differently. We can love more wholeheartedly and more in its fullness, which is so good. So, to bring today's episode full circle, I think this weekend in Vegas reminded me how belonging regulates us, how that sacred ground, how presence is really truly the medicine. My body, my being felt so safe and so held because it remembered being seen and held by people who knew me. And they helped me remember something that is so precious. And that's what our children, I think, crave most from us. It's not answers per se, it's not performance, but it is the same felt sense of safety. The calm nervous system that says, hey, you're home, you're safe, you are loved. I've got you, I see you. I'm right here, and I am not going anywhere. So may we keep learning this language of presence. May we remember that love is not what we feel as much as it's what they feel. And may we give ourselves the grace to keep growing, to keep healing, and to keep showing up. Not perfectly, but humanly. And as Gabor says, the most important gift we can offer our children is our own healing. And I would take that one step further and say, as that healing takes root, our presence finds ground. And presence is again where we want to land. So until next time, this is the practice of being human. So much love.